Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. After another 4 months, the Wave 3 tracks for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC have finally arrived, just in time for the holidays. And did we get a treat with these 2 cups, giving us possibly the best wave of tracks yet. And of course, this means that we have to go in and rank these tracks from worst to best. And I've gotta say, these were probably the hardest to rank so far on account of how much I enjoyed racing through each and every one of them. But anyways, with that, let's go! Starting things off at the number 8 spot, we have London Loop, another track from Mario Kart Tour that takes inspiration from a real-world location, and this time around we're drifting through the streets of London, navigating around double-decker buses as well as through various gardens filled with chain chomps. Also, as we've seen from the previous Mario Kart Tour tracks that have been included in these waves of DLC, each lap is different each time around, giving it a little spice. I will say that for me, there just wasn't much going on in this track, nothing to really make it stand out. The most interesting thing for me was on the last lap when all of the chain chomps get loose and are now freely roaming and rampaging the parks, which I thought was a fun little feature. But beyond that, this track leaves a bit to be desired, and that's why it takes the bottom spot of this list. Moving on to the number 7 spot, we have Berlin Byways, which is also a track from Mario Kart Tour. To me, this is London Loop with just more going on. You have a little subway filled with toads and shy guys you can drive through real quick for an item, you have whomps that you can do tricks off of, as well as a couple of thwomps that you can boost under at the end of a couple of the laps. I also liked how there was traffic through the streets, giving us some more obstacles to have to navigate through, as well as giving the track a little more character and more going on to keep things interesting. Despite its ranking on the list, I did have a lot of fun with Berlin Byways. It's more about the competition it has this time around that puts it at the 7th spot. Now at number 6, we have Rock Mountain, which was originally in Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS. You start this track off navigating on the cliffs of a mountain and eventually through a cave filled with swoops. Before you know it, you're gliding over a mountainous forest, trying to glide over the various pipes to give yourself a little more airtime. Then you ascend up the steep mountainside with giant boulders crashing down upon you, and all of this is what makes this track just feel like such an adventure to drive through. There's also a lot of paragliding going on in this track with some neat routes you can take if you can maintain the airtime. I know I'm probably going to sound like a broken record in this video, but despite having a ton of fun with this track, the steep competition of this wave of tracks puts Rock Mountain only at the 6th spot. Next up at the number 5 spot is Boo Lake, a track that was originally in Mario Kart Super Circuit for the Game Boy Advance. I always feel like when a track comes over from the Game Boy Advance, there's so much potential for it to be something new since there's a lot they can do with the track given the limitations these tracks had on the Game Boy Advance. And Boo Lake is an example of one that hit. The spooky atmosphere is perfect as you drift around tight turns and eventually make your way into the eerie looking lake that is filled with fish bones, as well as more of the boardwalk that require pulling off some tight turns. And before you know it, you ascend out of the lake and do it all again. Definitely an example of a short but sweet track, Boo Lake just misses out on the top half of the rankings. Coming in at the number 4 spot is Merry Mountain, and maybe it's just that I'm in the holiday spirit, but I am a sucker for a fun holiday themed track. For one, I love that there's a flying sleigh train constantly soaring through the course, dropping coins for all the racers. And you can even drive up and off of the train track ramp where the flying sleigh train makes its initial takeoff. Between the giant candy canes, giant presents sticking out of the mountainside, lit up houses and trees all around the course, as well as a ski lift taking toads up and down the mountain, there are just so many aesthetic details to this track that give it a personality. On top of that, the ascent and descent off the mountain is super fun and satisfying to drift around. It's a short track that feels over too soon, but the time you do get to race on it feels well worth the spot in the top half of this list. Now at number 3 we have Peach Gardens, which was originally on Mario Kart DS and was one of the under the radar tracks I was really hoping would make it to this DLC. For this track, you drive around the garden outside of the Mushroom Kingdom that Peach has presumably designed, navigating around chain chomps on the loose, Monty moles jumping out of their holes, as well as a courtyard full of various hedge sculptures of some of our favorite characters. I always really loved the chill vibe of this track when I played it on Mario Kart DS, and it doesn't disappoint here either. There's also a moment on the last lap where we get a surprise lap variation similar to what we've seen from the Mario Kart Tour tracks in previous waves, where now we're driving through the track backwards, giving an already great track a little more spice. At the runner-up spot, we have one of my favorite tracks of all time, Maple Treeway. For this track, you navigate a treeway filled with autumn-colored leaves that are flowing across the whole track, which is such a cool aesthetic. Autumn is my favorite time of year, so I'm always a sucker for stuff like this. But beyond that, it's just such a fun track to drive through, with a giant cannon blasting you up the tree, to making your way around a bunch of giant wigglers, to blasting through the various piles of leaves, hoping a mushroom pops out to give you a quick boost. With all the winding turns to drift through, as well as a small half-pipe section that I'm glad to see they kept in here, Maple Treeway, as always, is one of the best Mario Kart tracks out there, but it took something special to beat it out for the top spot. And at the top spot, what else could it be besides 3DS Rainbow Road? In my opinion, the greatest Rainbow Road of all time, and it's amazing that we finally get it here in Mario Kart 8. It had been a minute since I've played it though, so it hit me pretty hard going through it again just how special this track is. You start off navigating the winding rainbow roads as you wrap around planets and bounce off a mushroom. But before you know it, you're drifting on a planet's ring before descending down to a moon, doing tricks off of the craters on said moon, trying to avoid the bouncing chain chomps in zero gravity. It all caps off with an epic blast through a colorful tunnel into an awesome glide through star rings above the stretch of Rainbow Road. With the iconic soundtrack backing it, this track is as magical as ever, and well deserving of the top spot. But those are just my rankings of the Wave 3 tracks in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC. Let me know down in the comments how you would rank these tracks. Also be sure to give this video a like, because one like equals one dancing Santa Mario, and be sure to subscribe for more videos in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.